Welcome after the break. Now we'll see about the DTD attributes. So in HTML also we saw many attributes are there for HTML. Now in XML also for each and every element we can design or specify our unique attributes. And this particular attributes can be created with the help of @list tag. And this particular @list tag must be in uppercase letters. So it is just similar to our previous video, that is the element tag, where if you want to create an element in XML you have to specify the element tag in uppercase letters. Here if you want to specify an attribute you have to specify this particular @list tag in capital letters. And this is the following syntax for any attribute. So to start with the @list keyword, after that the particular element name, after the element name the attribute name comes. So what is an attribute? This attribute name is nothing but the name of the attribute. Any attribute can be created, and this particular attribute must not be duplicated. After the attribute name we have to specify the attribute type. And this particular attribute type, it is used to instruct the parser how to handle the data. So we have various set of attribute types which informs the parser about the particular attribute used in the document. So we are going to see about various attribute types in our upcoming slides. The next one will be the attribute value. This particular attribute value used to contain some values which should be specified in some order. About this also we are going to see in our next video. So now let's get started by seeing some of the examples and various attribute types. The first attribute type, the categories will be like CDATA, ID and IDREF, NMTOKEN and NMTOKENS, enumerated list. So these are the various attribute types which we are going to see one by one. To start with, CDATA. In our previous video, we have seen about PC data, hash PC data. So what we saw there is that particular hash PC data is known as a parsed character data, and it will inform the parser regarding that particular element. So whatever the mistakes that I've done in that particular element will be noted down by the parser and the errors will be shown on the screen. But this particular CDATA is useful only for attributes. This particular CDATA is known as the character data. As the name states, it makes a parser ignore the reserved characters. It means what? If I want to provide any other characters like lesser than, greater than, any ampersand which was not allowed in PC data can be provided in this attribute type which is known as CDATA. That is the main use of this. And this particular CDATA syntax will be like @list, element name, attribute name. Afterwards, instead of attribute type, I am replacing with CDATA. And see to that the CDATA must also be in capital letters. After CDATA, we are going to specify attribute value. Anyhow, about this, we are going to see a sample code. At that time, you will understand it more clearly. After this CDATA can also be specified in section. Section is nothing but a particular tag like thing which comes inside the particular element like this. So this is the syntax. So you can notice that there is a less than sign, exclamation mark. Within the set brackets I am specifying CDATA is a keyword. Within again one more set bracket I am specifying the string. This particular string can be anything with any special symbols, which I am going to show you based on a program so that you will understand it better. Welcome. So now we are going to see about the practical example for our CDATA section. So for that I have created already one program. Just open it with Notepad. After this, just consider, in our previous video also we saw about this doc type section which is known as an internal DTD. So in this I'll just quickly revise the things. So here is our root element college. Inside of a college root element I'm having one child element that is known as student, and about this sign with the plus symbol we have seen in our previous video, which is known as cardinality indicators, and this particular cardinality indicator is used that we must specify that particular element one or more number of times in an XML document. So likewise the question mark is also an cardinality indicator, asterisk. So about all these things we saw in our previous video, so I'm not going to stretch much on this particular topic. So we'll just move out to the topic which we have to see just right now. So our next topic will be about this atlas. In this atlas, I have said in my slides, atlas is nothing but if I want to create an attribute for an element, I have to use this atlas keyword. After using that atlas keyword, my syntax will be first the element name. My element name is roll number because I want to create an attribute for this particular element roll number. After that, this ID is nothing but the attribute name. So it is your own wish. The attribute name, the element name is your own wish. You can specify anything. After this CDATA is nothing but the attribute type. As we have seen in our slides, CDATA stands for character data, and this particular character data is used to ignore some of the special characters from the parser. It doesn't consider them. For that also I'll show you some examples so that you'll understand better. After the CDATA, I have specified something in double quotes which is known as hash implied, which is nothing but the attribute value. So about this particular attribute value, anyhow we are going to see in our upcoming videos. Before that, in this particular video, I'm going to use this hash implied again and again. So I'll just tell the meaning of hash implied. This particular hash implied will ignore the errors that are made inside that particular attribute. Either you can give that attribute or else you can remove that attribute. So it becomes like an optional attribute. If you specify hash implied, that particular attribute is optional for that particular element. If you want, you can specify. If you don't want, you need not specify that. That is the main use of hash implied. So after that, the regular declarations. After the regular declarations inside the XML content, you can notice this roll number is my element, ID is my attribute, and this particular 10 is nothing but my value of that particular attribute. Now when I execute this program executes fine. Now you can notice that. I'm opening in Internet Explorer. It executes. I'll also test by using validate XML. It says the validation is successful, no problem. Now consider if I make some changes in this coding. As I shown in my previous video, when I put some greater than sign or lesser than sign, it shows some errors. Now I'm going to demonstrate by putting some greater than sign or lesser than sign in my attribute value, and let's see what happens. Now here I'm going to insert greater than sign. I'm going to save this and again run this in my browser. It says no problem. Again, if I validate the XML, again it says validation successful. Now you can notice that since I specified CDATA, this particular CDATA will inform the parser that whatever the value of the attribute it is, if it has some special characters, okay, please do not treat them as errors. Please just ignore them. That is the main use of this CDATA. So if you specify CDATA, whatever changes you are giving in your attribute value will not reflect in your code. It will not show any errors. That is the main use of the CDATA. Now in this particular coding, you can see that roll number I gave as 10 greater than, and in this particular student element I didn't give any attribute. You can notice that roll number is empty. I didn't give any attribute. The main reason of specifying this as hash implied. Hash implied, as I said, it is optional. If I want to give, I can give. If I need not give, I need not give that. It is my wish. That is the main use of this hash implied. So this is about the attribute list, and I said the CDATA can also be created in a section format. How to do that? So you can notice that. So I'll tell the syntax. This syntax is quite tough, so I'll say it line by line, step by step. Please note it. First, if you want to have a CDATA section within the XML document, so first step you have to do is that put a lesser than sign, afterwards an exclamation mark, afterwards again a set bracket, just write CDATA in capitals, Afterwards, again open a set bracket. Within the double quotes, type whatever strings you need with the help of the lesser than, greater than or ampersand symbols. It is your wish. After typing that, just close the double quotes and just close the two set brackets that have been opened previously, and thus close this greater than symbol. So this is how you have to specify the sections. So in this section, whatever the symbols you are giving, it reflects. Now you can ask me one question. So what is the difference between our previous, this particular CDATA and this particular CDATA? The main difference is this CDATA is an attribute type which will come only in XML structure under the Atlas tag. Consider, if you want to specify directly inside your XML content section, the CDATA attribute type, you can directly use this CDATA section to specify that within your particular element. Now let's get back to the slides. Fine. Our next attribute type is ID and IDREF. This particular ID attribute type, as the name states, it is used to uniquely identify an attribute in an XML document. In an XML document, we can have n number of elements. Okay, each element can have any number of attributes. Consider, if we must identify one element and one attribute uniquely, we must use the attribute type known as ID. And this particular ID attribute type has the following syntax. So to start with, Atlas is a keyword, element name. Afterwards that we can specify the attribute name, and after specifying the attribute name, you can specify the ID attribute type. As we have seen in our previous example, we specified CDATA. So in place of CDATA, you can specify the ID attribute type. So this particular ID attribute type uniquely identifies an attribute value in a whole XML document. And what is IDREF? IDREF is nothing but, if we have ID attribute, this IDREF attribute is useful for referring an existing ID attribute. Consider I'm having two ID attributes. With the help of this IDREF attribute, I can refer to any one of those ID attributes. So for that, the syntax is just similar to the previous one. In place of ID, if you replace with IDREF, the syntax is visible. So this is mainly useful in ways where we can uniquely identify one attribute and we can specify that value. That value must not be duplicated. The ID attribute value must not be duplicated. If it is duplicated, our parser will return an error. Now we'll see a practical example to understand this. Now let's see a practical example for our ID and IDREF attribute types. So as I said, I already created a code. So in this code, like in our previous example, I'm using the same DTD, no changing that. So except here, for my roll number element, I'm using an attribute which is known as TID. So you can specify any other thing. It is not necessary that I have to use only TID. So I'm using here TID here as a attribute for a student, and here I'm using IDREF. Now I'll tell you the meaning behind this in a sooner. And after that, you can see at the bottom here, element tutor. Here also I gave an attribute list for tutor, and this also I'm saying it as an TID. Now you can ask me one question. Earlier you said that the attribute types cannot be duplicated, but here you have given in two places by using the same name. The main reason behind this is that this particular tutor is nothing but a teacher. For the teacher, I'm giving an ID. So that ID I'm specifying with the attribute type known as ID. So this TID is the attribute of a tutor. In order to know his identification number, this identification number has an attribute type known as ID. And that, as usual, we have seen as implied in our previous example also. As implied states that we are asking the parser to just ignore the errors which are committed inside the code. So here I mentioned ID, and you can notice here why again I mentioned TID here. The reason is I'm asking my parser to check what other ID attributes are there inside my XML document with the help of IDREF. Consider if I specify TID here also I must specify TID. Consider if I specify here TID1, it will not execute because there is no ID attribute with the name TID1. There is only one particular attribute, that is TID. So now, to a better understanding, come to our XML content portion. Here, we'll start from here. So one tutor, he's got an TID attribute and his ID is none other than T1. His ID is T1. The teacher named Gandhi, his ID is T1. Now I'm asking the student that who is your tutor? Who is your teacher? He's saying that Mr. Gandhi. So how do I refer him? Based on his roll number, I'm having the TID here. So this particular roll number of 1000, this particular student is studying under the teacher with the TID of known as T1. And similarly, student 2. Here also you can see that tutor 2 Shiva is teaching the student in a Sam, and I'm referring his particular teacher ID with the help of the TID. So this is how it works. Now, to a better understanding, what I'll do is that first I'll execute the code. Open with Internet Explorer. Now I'll show you the code how it executes. Now I'm validating by using XML. So it says validation successful. Now we'll make some changes in the code. So as you can see, my tutor ID has an attribute type known as ID, and my roll number attribute has an attribute type known as IDREF. So here you can understand that student is referring to a teacher. So consider here I'm giving T1, here I'm changing as T2. Fine. Actually the teacher T1 is Gandhi, but this particular David, I'm saying that he is studying under the teacher named T2. Now let's see what happens. Actually, when I execute this code, it executes. Again, I'll validate it. It says that validation is successful. The reason is, as I said, IDREF is useful for the parser to check whether any existing ID attributes are present in the code. Here, T1 is also present, T2 is also present. Consider, instead of T2, I'm giving T3. Can you see any T3 teacher available here? No, there is no tutor with the ID T3. Now let's see what happens. Again, I'm executing this. I'm validating by XML. Now it says that the attribute TID with the namespace references the ID T3, which is not defined anywhere in the document. Please note that. So my IDREF checks whether that particular attribute value is there anywhere in the XML document. Earlier, T1 was there in my XML document and T2 was also there in my XML document. But now T3 is not there in my XML document. So if you want T3 also to appear, you have to create a separate ID with a tutor named T3. Then it will be visible. Now for showing that, I'm again copying this. I'll paste it here. I'm creating one more student. Now I'm saying that this particular student name is Gopi and he is studying under the teacher name T3 and his teacher name is consider Tim. So now I'll execute this. We'll see what is the output. So I've executed it. Now you can see we have included a teacher named Tim with an ID 3. Now it must say validation successful. Yes, indeed. Since we have a teacher named T3, so from this we have understood that the ID attribute is used to indicate or specify a unique attribute value which cannot be duplicated. And this particular IDREF is also an attribute type which references to an existing ID attribute. So this is what we are going to see in this code. I hope so you understood this. So let's get back to the slides. Our next attribute type is NMTOKEN and NMTOKENS. So what does this do? This NMTOKEN is a string of character data where these strings are used to specify the attribute value. So it means what? I can specify any string related character data inside my attribute value. But the main important point is that this particular NMTOKEN must not contain any white spaces. It means a normal space. You can't provide spaces for the attribute values. And this is the following syntax. So it starts with @list, element name, attribute name. So instead of our previous ID and IDREF, we are giving NMTOKEN here. Of course, we have an attribute value. Till now we have seen only as implied. So this is about NMTOKEN. So NMTOKEN will take only the string data, and this particular string data must not contain any spaces. Whereas NMTOKENS is similar to the character data of NMTOKEN. So NMTOKENS is similar to NMTOKEN, but NMTOKENS take white spaces. So they accept space in between the attribute values. So the syntax for that is that in place of NMTOKEN, replace with NMTOKENS. So about this, we'll see a practical example so that you will understand it more clearly. Fine. Now we'll be seeing the practical demonstration of the NMTOKENs. So I already created a code. I'll open it in Notepad first. As you can see, like our previous DTD, here also I created the same thing. So I need not explain all those things. So to start with, as well as I'm going to create an attribute for my element roll number, and my attribute name is TID, and my attribute type will be NMTOKEN, and for my tutor attribute type is NMTOKENS. So here I'm going to tell the difference between the NMTOKEN and NMTOKENS first. To start with, NMTOKEN, as I said in my slides also, NMTOKEN is a set of series character of data. So it can contain numerics as well as numbers. Consider if I want to provide any space in between, it doesn't accept in NMTOKEN. So here first I'll execute this particular code. So in order to show you what is the output, so I'm opening with Internet Explorer. I'm just validating it as an XML. It says validation successful. So now I'm going to make some changes in this. As you can see, my roll number TID NMTOKEN is attribute type where it doesn't allow any space. So here in my roll number TID I gave A2BC, but there is no space. That is the reason I got validation successful. Now I'm specifying A2 space BC. Now there's a white space in between. Now we'll see what happens. So I'm executing this again. Validate XML. Now it says that your roll number TID is A2 space BC. Since we provided a white space, our NMTOKEN attribute type treated that particular attribute as two names. The first name is A2, the second name is BC. So that is the reason it is asking multiple names found in attribute value. So please give one name. It's saying like that. So if you provide space, it will treat it as a two names. So that is the reason we must not provide space in NMTOKENs. So I'm removing the space and saving it again. Now I'll make some more changes like in our NMTOKENs. In NMTOKENs, as I've said already, I can provide spaces. So NMTOKENs is similar to our NMTOKEN, but in NMTOKEN the space is not allowed, but in NMTOKENs the space is allowed. As you can see, I've provided some space here, TN TA1 space BC. It works. Even consider if I don't give the space also, it works. As you can see, I remove the space for this particular tag and will execute that in the browser. I'll run it in validate XML. It says validation successful. So for this particular NMTOKENs, there is no restriction regarding where to give the spaces or not. That is your own wish. So NMTOKEN is a set of series character of data which does not provide any white space. But this particular enum tokens, if you need to provide a space for the attribute values also, you must use the attribute type as enum tokens. So please remember that. So now let's get back to the slides. Fine. Our next attribute type is enumerated list. Even in the C language, we study this enumerated list, which is known as NM. So as the name states, it provides a set of list of choices from which the user can select a possible attributes. It means what? Used to provide a list of possible attribute values from which the user can select any one of the attribute value. So by using this enumerated list, you can provide a choice of values that can come inside the attribute. So an attribute can have multiple choices. If whatever choice you need, you can select from one of those choices. That is the main use of this enumerated list. As I said, it is used to make a choice between the different attribute values. So how to do this? This is done with the help of the pipe character. This pipe character already we have seen in our previous video lectures. So this particular pipe character has a syntax as @list, element name must come after the attribute name. After attribute name, within the parentheses, please mention the values that have to come. Value 1 pipe character, value 2 pipe character, likewise. So a pipe character comes in between of each value of an attribute. Afterwards, at last, you have to specify the attribute value that is implied or some other thing. So now let's see a practical example for this particular attribute type. Fine. Now let's see the practical example of the enumerated list. So I have already created a program. So I'll open it in Notepad. This particular Notepad, this code states that you can see in this @list gender. Now, from our previous example, I have included a new element which is known as element gender. So it has the data type, that is a element type known as PC data. And with of that particular gender element, I am creating one particular attribute that is known as cat. Cat is nothing but category. So you can specify any name. So it suits better for gender. I chose this cat. So within the parentheses, as the syntax states, I'm specifying the values. So M is my first value and F is my second value, separated with the help of a pipe character. So after this, after closing the right parentheses, you have to specify the attribute value. The attribute value here is implied. So now, within our XML content section, you can notice that this particular gender element with the attribute CAT, I'm mentioning M. So the male gender has the attribute value known as M, and the female gender, I'm specifying the attribute value as F. Now you can notice one point. Here I mentioned M or F. The user can either select any one of those. A person can be either male or female. Consider, instead of M or F, I'm typing any other character. First, I'll execute this particular code. I'll open this in Internet Explorer. I'll right click this, validate XML. It says me validation successful. So no problem with the code. So now I'm going to make some changes. So what are the two options available here? M and F. But I'm saying now that instead of M and F, I'm going to provide some other letter known as G. Now if I provide G, G is not an attribute value that has been provided inside my enumerated list. Only M and F has to be provided. Now I have provided G. Now let's see what happens. So when I execute this particular code, it shows me G here. You can see that it shows me G here. Now when I execute and validate XML, it says that attribute cat has an invalid value according to the schema or DTD. So what is the value? G. So what it says, the attribute cat has an invalid value. It means what? The values are M or F, but the user has provided a unique, a separate value for the attribute known as G. So that is why it is not accepting. So from this you might have understood that why we are providing the enumerated list. So by using this enumerated list, the user will be provided with a set of options. From those options, user can select any one of them in their code. So for each element, for each attribute, there must be only one value from the set of values. I hope so you understood this. Now let's get back to the slides. Fine. Now we came to the end of this video. So before taking a break, we'll just see a quick summary regarding whatever we have seen in this particular video. So in this video, we have seen about the various attribute types, for example, like CDATA, ID, IDREF, NMTOKEN, NMTOKENS, and at last we saw about enumerated list. So here in this, each attribute type has a unique functionality. We saw that using some practical examples. So in our next video, we'll be seeing about what are the various values that can come inside our attribute type. So in this video itself, we saw one of the attribute value, that is implied. So we are going to see the rest of them also in our upcoming video. So I hope so this video was helpful for you. So thank you. Meet you in the next video.